Welcome to the RockStar In Life podcast, where you learn the secrets to unleashing your inner rock star so you can make the world your stage. What's up, RockStars In Life? It's Siri Shakti, and with me I have my co-host,
Dr. Dan's in the house.
Well, today we have a great episode planned for you guys. I'm really looking forward to this one because this is a subject that is so dear to our hearts. This is something that has become such a big part of our life and our children's lives. And today's show is going to be called Why Homeschooling?
Yep, why homeschooling? And you've probably heard, if you have, I'm assuming that you've heard some of our other episodes. And, I know in the very first one, episode 0, welcome to the RockStar In Life podcast, get to know us a little more. In that one, we actually talked a little about our own personal stories. We mentioned homeschooling a little bit. And also, I believe it was in episode 5, we talked about why motivation sucks. And we also went a little deeper into the story. But I don't know if you want to kind of share what led us into homeschooling. I guess
Sure.
Probably be better to start with why, it's important to know for those of you that haven't listened to those other episodes of why, we are so we kind of just jumped right into homeschooling.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and I'll let Siri Shakti kind of just brush over it real quick as well. But for me, I was always getting in trouble in school. When it came to taking tests, I would just scribble, in the boxes, they had the A, B, C, D, and I would just scribble an A, then a C, then a B, then a D, and I would just go through the whole little Scantron thing or whatever those were called back. I think it was called a Scantron. And with the number 2 pencil, remember those?
I remember.
So
Still
I would
use
just,
them.
Yeah, so I would just do that because, when I would read things, my brain just would not process the questions. If somebody was to ask me a lot of those questions, I probably could have answered them I would have been probably, gotten B's, maybe C's, but, somewhere around there. And especially if I could ask them a question. Oh, so what do you mean by that question? Oh, okay. Can you ask it a different way? Oh, here's the answer. But no, you're throwing a time limit. You're making me read it. And for me, it was just really tough. So I was labeled a problem child. And because of that, I was always being sent to the principal's office. I was always getting detention. I don't think there was any year I didn't do summer school, right? Just a big waste. I remember, and I kind of mentioned this, that, when I was, I think it was fourth grade. I think I mentioned it was either 4th or 5th grade. And my teacher, it was a science teacher, had said to me, or had said to the class, we're going to have a pop quiz today, and it's going to be graded on a scale all the way from 100% down to Dan's score. Actually,
yeah,
Daniel,
that's not cool.
Because I went by the name Daniel, so to be proper to tell the full truth, they said Daniel. So that really sucked, and it really sucked. Lots of bullying in school, lots of things like that. So I did not enjoy school one bit to this day, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but to this day, the only positives that I can look back and be grateful for in school was making me so, I don't know if I want to use the word, committed, it hardened my skin, like we've talked about, and I don't think in these episodes, but in the past, me and you, we've talked about toughening your skin with rejection when it comes to sales or living your truth even,
Right.
is being so tough that no matter what somebody says to you, it just bounces off you. And you're like, yeah, whatever. I've had worse, bring it on, and that's exactly, that's the only thing that I find of value that I got from school. And I tell you what, our kids can learn that without having to spend that many years of that much torment, right?
Yeah, God, I can remember so clearly when I first met you, when we got into conversations about our past in school. Right off the bat, you were like, I hated school. You were so clear how much you hated school. And
I hated reading too. I hated because I considered reading and learning all part of school still. And because of that, I didn't want to learn anything else. And, and I wanted to be a personal trainer. I wanted to be a bodybuilder. And even then they forced us to go to, to take certifications and courses. Right. And we had to take a test. And I know you were worried about taking that test too, because you had to learn like the body and all that stuff, and the biomechanics and the anatomy and all that stuff. And for me, even I went to the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I had to go to San Francisco, spend some time there, and go through that training, and that was like even harder. And I can't believe I actually passed. I don't know how I did, because I remember to this day I was sitting in the class, and fortunately, did I or did I not? No, I think after that point I realized. So in that class, like I had the hardest time taking the test, because they had like those tables, because it was at a hotel we had to take the test, and they had like the tables with the cloth, the hotel set up for you, and somebody's leg kept hitting one of them. They were shaking their leg, and I keep hearing it's like, like it was so subtle. It was like the teeniest sound you could hear. But trust me, when I came to me reading any questions, I could not focus whatsoever. Oh, so God. To this day, I mean, I don't take tests anymore, but when I had to last, for real estate, I actually brought earplugs.
Right.
I popped in earplugs, and that's pleasant hearing yourself breathe when you're, because you can hear yourself breathing and yawning and making noises.
Yeah. And we've talked so much about this in our past. Like for myself, to be honest, I didn't hate school. I was one of those kids that loved school, like in elementary school and part of junior high school. But I was not the typical book smart kid. For the most part, I got very average grades when I was younger. I remember in elementary school, they had a meeting, which I thought it was so silly. They had a meeting with my parents and me in there as well. And they were basically just talking over me, saying, your daughter's struggling. She needs extra help. And my dad was so upset that they were having that meeting in front of me, because I remember very clearly feeling like, when I was hearing this by my teachers who I respected, I felt like I was stupid. And I think that was probably like the first seed that got planted, that I thought like I was dumb. And so as far as grades, I was very average, but I was such an artist. Whenever I would do like a book report or something, my art would always stand out, and my stories were so great, but my punctuation and my spelling just sucked. And so I would always get these reports back with like red ink all over the place, and, saying I needed to work on my punctuation, my spelling, my grammar. But I would always have a little side note saying, but overall the story was beautiful and your art was exceptional.
I remember all those red marks. And
oh, God.
And man, yeah. I mean, my punctuation, grammar, verbs, nouns, adjectives, for some people, they look at that and they go, oh, that stuff's easy. Well, yeah. Not for me. And not for you as well. And, we do Mad Libs, and it says like, oh, use a verb, use an adjective, use a noun. Yeah. And like, I always have to read those little cheat sheets, because I can't commit that to memory. It's not as important to me, because when do you use that besides using it for Mad Libs? And you got spell check, you got like Grammarly, plugins and add-ons and stuff for your browser. Mm-hmm. You got all these different things now. And what's crazy, even before we had that stuff, when I wrote my books back in 2006, I suck at punctuation and a lot of grammar and spelling words. But how did I write 2 books in just a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
How did I do that? Well, I hired somebody. I paid them like $10, $15 an hour that was an expert at that stuff.
Yeah.
And they did it for me, and they were happy to take that money.
Well, I love that you're saying that, because everyone has different opinions on this, but I know you and I, Dan, have this common feeling that everyone's good at different things, and editors are editors for a reason, because they're good at what they do, and they wouldn't have a job if all of us were good at all of that. And it's so funny, because even in like the homeschooling community, I've brought up this point before, and some people agree with me and some people just say that's pure laziness. And I'm like, whatever, it's not laziness.
What makes me laugh though, and I didn't realize this at the time, was I'd actually hired one person to do the editing and to check, everything and go through it and proofread the entire thing. And she had like a master's or something, or, she graduated with all that stuff. She knew how to do all that stuff, right? She gave me like her colleges and all that stuff. Then I also had a friend that I met through Tony Robbins. And she also offered, I think she offered either after I'd already hired the girl or before or something. She said, hey, I'll take a look at it. And I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. I think I offered, or she offered for my other book that I hadn't gotten the other person to do yet. And then the other person had reached out and said, hey, I'd like to do your other book too. So I said, okay, fine. So I let them both do it. And I figured, what's the big deal? I'll just, I'll credit them both on the books. And, so I went and I was looking at the books, and I was looking at the notes and everything, and there was like so many conflicting things between the two, and both of them had like masters and were like experts in this stuff, and it was just insane. And then I think I might have asked, or I Googled it or something, or back then it might not have been Google. I don't know what was 2006. Was that Google
or was
Google.
That? Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was like
Google.
Ask Jeeves or something.
No,
I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that one, Ask Jeeves?
No, but I know.
He was like a little butler, and you're supposed to ask him questions, and he'd come up with an answer. And there was also, there was also what was Web Crawler or whatever, and there were some older ones. But
was I born then? Because I know you're so old compared to me.
I think you're a pollywog. No, there was Lycos, I think was another one, and there was a bunch of them. But anyways, Alta Vista. I mean, I'm just like thinking back at all those fun ones. But anyway, so I had looked it up, or I had researched it, and the answer was that, that there is no, they're both right. I mean, how crazy is that, where you're like, oh, well, it could be both ways. You're just like, seriously?
Right.
That makes it even more confusing.
And that's where all the confusion lies.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that it'd be really valuable to, just kind of touch on why we chose homeschooling. I know we've discussed this before, but for those of you that haven't heard those other episodes, I want to get into this so you understand where we're coming from. So when our oldest daughter, who's now 16, her name is Kayleen, when she was, it really started when she was about 3. There was people in our family were noticing that she wasn't really talking as much as other kids her age, and there was already some concern growing, not so much in us, but just certain family members that
they made you concerned.
Well, yeah, they kind of put that little concern in there. It started to kind of grow that there was something going on, and that we needed to do testing and things like that. So at one point, we eventually ended up doing the full testing. And at that time, really the only diagnosis was that she needed speech therapy, which, duh. I mean, I already knew there was an issue with speech at the time. And that most likely she was, somewhere on the spectrum. But at that time, there really wasn't as much talk about autism and Asperger's and things like that as there is nowadays. So with that said, we took that information, and the whole time they were doing the testing, it was not sitting well with me. I mean, just the whole process felt so, my intuition was saying, this is not what you want for your daughter, and I didn't like the constant talk about labels and, your daughter's this, your daughter's that. This is her struggle. This is her strength. And I'm like, she's like 4 years old right now, And so anyways, we just kept going down that path because,
I remember I had asked him, and I remember I kind of lost faith in them when I asked. I said, so what? Okay, so now that you guys are, labeling her this, then what does that allow us to do? And they were just like, oh, well, then we just know.
Yes.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, then we just
So what
know.
if you didn't know? I mean, are you telling me you wouldn't be able to teach her the things that we're going to go through because you didn't know? It's like, seriously.
Right. Well, what we did get with that was the IEP. And so when we ended up putting her in mainstream public school for kindergarten, and she had an IEP, and that just lasted a few months because I can remember.
Did you explain what an IEP is?
It's an independent educational plan. And so, it's a whole plan of like a plan of attack of what special resources your child's going to receive. Each kid has it kind of individual. And so, here we put her into the public school, and the one thing that really struck me was the class felt very unnatural to me. Like, here were these children that in my eyes, yes, they seemed like they had differences, but to me, they just looked like gifts. They just looked like they were just different than other kids, but it wasn't a bad thing. And they were all put together in this one small space. And I felt like they were being pigeonholed, like you're this and you're that. Here's your, title that we've given you. And there was a constant conversation on a daily, on a weekly basis about what your child is. And it just did not sit well with me. I didn't want her to grow up having this label attached to her, because you and I had both had experiences being labeled, like, you with like ADHD, me, they said, oh, probably dyslexia, she has challenges reading and things like that. And those titles stuck with both of us. And, I can't speak for everyone in the world. I'm sure there's people out there that didn't have that same experience like we did. But I knew for us and for our daughter that was not the right path. So we ended up discussing it and we took her out of school. To be honest, we had no real plan of attack of what we were going to do. I mean, at the time, we knew nothing about homeschooling. I remember we started looking into private schools. Like, I was really interested in Montessori, Waldorf schools, which are amazing schools. But at the time, we were not that well, financially. And so to put that amount of money into a school wasn't going to be feasible for us. We just couldn't make that work. So what were we left with? Well, I don't remember exactly how it all came about, but it kind of just happened organically. While I was trying to figure out our next step, I decided, well, she's not going to be in school, so I better start doing some stuff at home with her. And little by little, I started just kind of like working with her here and there. It was really just this whole world of information that I opened myself up to. And at the beginning, it was just real simple. I'd read to her. I worked with her on her ABCs. It was, learning her numbers, things like that, which all these milestones came much later for her compared to other kids her age. So,
yeah, but the difference is we didn't label and we didn't stress about it. I mean, yeah, of course we stressed, but we didn't let her see the stress. We didn't have the family meetings and the constant like, oh, you're doing wrong or you're so far behind everybody else and, or anything like that. And I mean, it just really boils down to, we talked about commitment in a past episode and with commitment, that's what we did is we said, like, how did we, start homeschooling? Is we said, you know what? Well, we're committed to not putting our kids' lives and education and lives. It boils down to their lives, not just their education, their lives in a stranger's hand. Somebody that in their hands that, they're getting paid a paycheck. And we're like relying on them to shape our children.
Right.
And not even then, because they have so many kids in their classroom. At the time, I think we had like 30 kids in our classroom. And I've heard now it's like, how many you said? Like in some places?
Oh, I've heard up to 50 kids in a classroom.
So
now,
that's insane.
And
that's not even, we're not even talking about just in the classroom.
Yeah.
Right. Because then they've got like PE. Or not just PE, but they've got, what is it called? Recess.
Recess.
You got recess and you got lunch. And who's teaching our kids then? Right?
Right.
Who? No one.
No
It's
one.
It's other kids. It's Lord of the Flies. If you guys have seen that movie, it's Lord of the Flies where they're just like out there like in a pecking order. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to do that,
Yeah. And one of the things that I remember, I forgot who told me this, but I just loved it. They said to me, the best person, who is better to teach your child than the person that gave birth to them, which really resonated with me because you think about it, your child better than anyone. You know what makes them tick, what doesn't work, what does work, and what better person to educate them. And that's the one thing I love about homeschooling is there is not just one way to do this. There is countless ways to homeschool your child, and you can get super creative with it. And over the years, I have found ways to, adjust what I'm doing with the kids depending on their interests and also what child I'm working with. Like just, I'm not to go too deep into this right now, but just to touch on it, one of my kids does online homeschooling and she's really independent. Okay. My other does a lot more work one-on-one with me, and so on with my other son too, or with my son. He does a lot more with me as well. So each child kind of has their own form of education. And in school, all the children are being taught the same way. Yes, I've heard some parents say, well, the parents or the teacher sometimes takes the child to the side and works them independently. But there's only so much of that one teacher can do with that many kids.
Yeah, and it's not every teacher.
Yes, and it's not every day.
I know for you as well, because we've talked about this, but there's, everybody can remember like one, maybe two teachers that were kind of special. Usually it's just one in their life where they're like, oh, I remember that one teacher. They really cared, but that's just one out of how many. They should all be like that.
Yeah.
But, again, one of the things that sucks is that their paycheck is horrible. And they spend the most time with our kids. They're the one that's responsible for shaping our children's futures. They should be getting paid like doctors too.
Oh my gosh,
and then you can bring in the best of the teachers.
Yeah.
People that actually want to do it for a living because they care about the kids. But, we are where we are. So you got to do, what you got to do to take care of your kids.
Yes.
But so
now,
or you want to talk about, like I was going to mention, like before we get into the different types of homeschooling.
Okay.
Let's first talk about like some of the common questions we get.
Sure. Yeah. I'd say the top one that I hear all the time, and it makes me laugh now, and I'll tell you why it makes me laugh, because when I was growing up, if someone would have told me about homeschooling, I would have been like, oh, those kids, they have no friends. How will they learn how to socialize? Or, really my idea of what
because they're going to be stuck in the house all day. They're just going to see you. You'll be their only friend.
Yeah, because we chain them to the bed, right? They just sit there all
day.
Not
allowed outside. Yep.
No. This is something I hear all the time, and it is a very common misconception. And so let me enlighten you here. One thing you have to understand is that homeschoolers, first of all, homeschooling has grown so much over the years. Homeschooling nowadays compared to 20, 30 years ago is a whole different entity. You have homeschool groups, you have, programs, you have countless support, groups, things like that. And another thing too, the homeschooling children, they normally go out into the world with their parents. When the mother or the father, they go grocery shopping, they, run errands, they have to go do things in their day-to-day life, kids go with their parents. And so what ends up happening is they learn how to socialize and how to be around people of all ages because they're out in the natural, real world around people of all ages, of all types. My kids go grocery shopping with me all the time, and they always have. And, I take them wherever I go. And so they learn how to interact with young people, with people their own age, and with adults very easily. For them, they're not scared of talking to adults because they do it all the time. And now let me clarify here. I'm not trying to say that kids in public school are scared of talking to adults. That's not my point. But let's look at the difference here. Kids that are in public school spend about 7 to 8 hours a day at school, which means they are in a classroom or at recess with a group of, let's say, around 30 or more kids, all their same age. So that is actually more unnatural than a child that's out in the world talking to people of all ages. And so
because they're learning from each other, and they all don't know anything.
Yeah, because they're all the same age.
I remember some of those conversations as a kid, and they were pretty bad. Looking back, I'm like, seriously?
Right.
I think at one point I thought, Yeah, I think at one point, never mind. I won't even go into that.
Okay.
That's pretty bad.
Let's not talk that.
But yeah, we had some crazy talk. So
okay, well, let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah. So this idea of socialization, I understand where it comes from, and maybe it used to be that way a long time ago when I think most homeschoolers came from more rural type areas. But nowadays, no. This is homeschooling of the future, guys. I mean,
well, it also depends on the parents.
right.
Like typically when I see, when somebody says like, oh, I know somebody that homeschool and their kid was like all, withdrawn and wouldn't talk to anybody or something like that. A lot of the times it's, their parents are like that. Their parents don't talk to anybody either. So they didn't learn it from homeschooling. They learned it because that's how their parents are.
From their parents.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It is what it is.
Right.
But it's not to blame on homeschooling,
Yes.
as far as that goes.
And not to say, I'm not trying to say we all have to be extroverts, but the other thing too is as far as making friends. Now, I will say there has been times in our homeschooling where I felt, I think this happened more with Bodhi because our son Bodhi, we tried countless times putting him into different sports and group activities. And our son Bodhi, we have finally come to realize how he really likes more independent type activities.
Which is how I was too. So.
Right, yeah. And so he really enjoyed like swim team because, that's still a team, but it's still more independent than like soccer or football or something like that. He just also started rock climbing, which is definitely a very solo type sport. But, within that, when, he's going to be meeting people. And so there has been times when I was kind of searching for what he liked that I felt like, he needs to have more time with kids and have more playtime. And so the one thing I started doing was seeking out homeschool groups. And thankfully, there's great homeschool groups. And, all you have to do is just get online, do a little bit of searching, and you'll find ones in your area. And where we live in Southern California, there's this wonderful one that we go to, and there's a few boys that are around our son's 8 right now. They're around 7 to 9 years old. And, we go there once a week and they just play and have fun. And he gets to, be all rowdy and do what boys do and stuff. And so he is getting that time with kids that are around his own age. It's not like he never gets that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's I was actually doing some research myself too when we were talking about this, and there was like an article, and actually a few articles I was reading, and they were saying like research suggests that homeschooled children are actually getting closer ties to the community, relating to people outside of their grade level. Because homeschoolers learn to be active participants in their neighborhoods and soak up the etiquette of their adult life in the process. And it's so true, because like you said, we're constantly taking our kids, when kids are in school, we'll take them to like Trader Joe's, or we'll go to Fashion Island, an outdoor shopping mall over here, or we'll just go to the beach,
yes,
and they'll talk to other adults. And sometimes we'll see kids as well, or we'll go to, Disneyland in the day,
right,
or Knott's Berry Farm. And, they're definitely not as busy. They're like 80% not as busy as it is like on the weekends or the summer,
which we love.
But there's still kids there because, kids are out of school somewhere, or they're homeschooled as well. So they do get to, to meet other children and play with them. And that's how cool is that? Because, in school, you are seeing the same kids constantly. If you're new at a school, within a year, you're going to either have seen every kid in there, or you're going to meet within just a couple weeks, probably.
Right.
It's not like you're going to be like, oh, here's somebody new to talk to that, but whereas in everyday life, they see new people, they get to communicate with new people, and it might just be like, oh, hey, are you in line? Or do you know where the closest restroom is? Or, I'd like to order this, or whatever it is. And that's how real life is.
Yeah.
I mean, as adults, are we like surrounded the same, couple hundred people constantly?
Right.
No, we're not. So, I mean, that's definitely, one of the advantages right there. And then obviously, then it's like not Lord of the Flies, and we're not, and kids aren't worried about, we're not worried about our kids getting bullied,
Yes.
or anything, or even, horrific things like school shootings or, some craziness like that. But,
Yeah.
just these are just all, many reasons that reinforce it for us and people that we know.
Yeah. 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 So I think,
What are some of the other ones? I know for me, one thing I looked up too is because I've heard, this doesn't come up common, but I think it's important, is homeschooling even legal? Your kid could get picked up and forced into school or whatever. In California, that's not the case. I have no idea in other states.
Okay.
But
I can tell you that homeschool is legal in all states. But with that said, there is a variation from state to state of what requirements they have you meet. So there is a website that I'm going to be posting the link to, and that has such a great, not only does it have all the information on each state, but it has this great diagram that shows you like by colors, what each state does, as far as what they require for homeschooling. California is one of the most lenient ones, which works for me.
I like that.
Yeah. So I'll definitely be posting that for you guys.
That's why we pay extra to live in California, right?
Right.
So check your state and laws in your country as well, because, if you're listening internationally, we have no idea what your country laws are. But you know what? For us, I'll tell you, if it was us and we were in another country or another state that made it really difficult for us to homeschool, or made it, like they tried to make it as impossible as possible, right?
Right.
I would either complete everything that was necessary to do it, or I would leave.
Yep.
I would go somewhere else. I am not gonna, there's no ifs, ands, or buts on that.
Yes. Same here. I would do that as well. And so, homeschooling is definitely legal though in all states, but you just want to be aware of what those laws are. Like, for instance, in California, I used to be a part of charter schools, which is still publicly funded. So, everything's just taken care within the charter school and is legal and everything. Once I stepped away from that and I decided to go off on our own and be a more independent type of homeschooler, which we'll get into the different kind of homeschoolings, ways of homeschooling in just a few minutes. But there's something that you have to fill out, which is called a homeschool affidavit. And it's really easy to fill out. In fact, I'll also send the link to that as well. And what that does is that makes you a private school. It makes you a legal private school out of your own home. So that frees yourself up for being able to teach your kids and create your own curriculum, but knowing that you're doing it legally.
And when you do that, you can also get some really cool discounts on all kinds of things. I mean, I haven't looked into everything, but I know for software, like things like Adobe, stuff that can cost like anywhere from $20 a month to hundreds of dollars every year, you can get it's some astronomical discount. It's worth it to get it. it's like really worth it. So, and there's
awesome.
and other software and tools as well, you can get discounts on too for your kids as they grow and as they learn, or if it's something that you need to teach or show them, or use to part of your teaching. Not saying you need any of those tools, but just saying that there's advantages to doing that as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover on that? Because I had my next one.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're good.
All right. So I had some people ask and I know you have it on your notes too, is like, well, how do I start to homeschool and how do I teach? Like, what do I do?
Right.
I don't know. Do I just go from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. or whatever the kids are doing today?
Oh God. Yes.
And just sit them in a classroom? Or I've even heard people say like, well, I had to have a problem with that because I don't have a dedicated room to make a classroom in, like put a chalkboard in and ABCs on the wall and give graham crackers and have playthings in there.
Don't you remember all those, I think it lasted years of me trying to be like a public school at home?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was fun, huh?
Yeah, I just let you do whatever you're doing. I was like, yeah, you'll figure it out.
I went through this phase at the beginning, which obviously makes sense because you're so used to traditional schooling, where I felt like I had to have it set up like a classroom. I had to work like the traditional hours. And there's something that people call deschooling, which I'm not going to get totally into right now because I want to have a whole podcast about that, a whole episode on it. But deschooling is actually for the parent, not for the kid so much, where it's you're breaking away from the beliefs and the ties that you have with traditional education of having to do things exactly how a public school does. And
so you're giving your brain a good washing, right?
Yes. Like you don't need a little desk, like at school and everything. And at the beginning, I put so much pressure on myself to do that, and it was just not working. I was like hitting my head against the wall trying to get that to work. So, when you're first getting started, I want you to try to set aside the expectations that you need to homeschool just like as if you were teaching a class to a group of students in school, okay?
Yeah, you don't need a dedicated room for this, okay?
No.
It'd be great if you had one,
right?
But you don't need it. We've got room here, but you do homeschooling over the damn house. You're like, go do it here, go do there. And that works
Yes.
best. You were always like struggling when you were trying to do it in this one room or this one area.
Uh-huh.
And then you kind of just let go and said, okay, fine. You do it in your room. You do it on the bed in our bedroom.
Yes.
You do it in the living room and you just do it wherever. You go to like Fashion Island, that outdoor mall, and at the tables at the food court. It's like.
When I was little, not so much now, but when I was little, I would take a blanket and go to the park and lay it out and they would all do their work. Like,
did you say when you were little?
No, when.
Sounded like you said when you were little.
Did I?
I don't know. We'll have to go back to that. You guys be the judge.
Rewind.
When I was little, when I was a wee bitty girl, and I used to homeschool other kids.
When our kids were little.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to take them to the park and we would sit either at the benches or we would sit on a blanket like under a tree and do their reading or their math or whatever. And that was like so nice. I cherish those moments. But now with our full schedules, with all their activities, we don't do that as much.
Well, you still do sometimes. You do certain things like that. But,
sometimes.
Or you go to the bookstore and
Yeah.
bring your work and stuff, or a park or whatever. And you can do that. It's completely up to you.
Yeah.
But
So
it's nice to get out of the house sometimes.
it is. Yes. Now, do you want me to go into, because I feel like part of this, as you're getting started homeschooling, part of it is, how do I homeschool? Like, what are the different ways of homeschooling that are available to me? Do you want me to cover that?
Yeah, let's hold that for 1 second because
Okay.
I know there's some other common questions we got because I know we're gonna go in through that. But
Okay.
just in case people listening are thinking as well, before we get into that, how much does homeschooling cost?
Yes.
I mean, it can be free minus the cost of like paper, pens. I mean, man, you get so much stuff for free online.
Oh my gosh.
So many
yes.
lessons, right? And
Yes.
you've bought a lot of courses. I mean, you spent like a couple $100 on a math course. You've spent money on a membership. You've spent money on all kinds of things, right?
Well, with me, everyone's a little bit different with this, but I've spent a lot of money on curriculums that I ended up not even using. I'm kind of a free spirit in that way, so I like to pick and choose from all different resources.
And they were all free, right?
They were all free.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, I ended up getting a membership to a website that I love, which I'll put the link there as well.
Do you remember what it's called?
It's called education.com. But it's a very small, it's a small fee. You can either pay for yearly or you can pay monthly. And I love it because they have such an array of worksheets, and they even bundle them into like a bundle of worksheets that cover one subject or one topic that you're working on. And I believe it goes from like preschool to like 8th grade. I could be wrong, but it's definitely around that grade. And it's really nice because on the left side they have it so you can like click what grade level or what subject, and it will pop up with all the different worksheets. And that
they go from preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd, 4th, up to 5th, I guess.
up to 5th. Okay. Yeah. So that one I've just loved over the years. So I know it's not free, but it's definitely not that. It's not the same as buying a curriculum for like $500.
So you pay like a yearly price or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Oh wow, yeah, they have a lifetime price for like $149.
yes,
$149, so you don't have to pay
Yeah.
monthly.
and also teachers in schools use this as well because they have it like for classrooms and things like that. And
Yeah, it's as little as $5 a month. So that
yeah, so that's been really valuable.
that's pretty cool. And then we talked about like software and stuff like that, which you don't need. You can get, if you want it to be part of your kid's education.
Well, I've even found for typing when I was having the kids first learning typing, I didn't want to buy a program. I just didn't want to. So I got online and I typed in like free typing programs. And I'm not certain of the name, but I will get the name of it and put it with our links. I found this awesome free program and they would just do it daily. And I felt like it was better than even many of the paid programs out there.
Well, I'll tell you as well. I mean, depending on the age of your child, but if they're just a little older, I don't know, like 8, 9, 10, and they're interested in learning and above, and they're interested in learning like, certain things. YouTube is an amazing resource.
Yes.
I mean, heck, at any age actually, because you can show them all kinds of videos, about the world, about the, like history and things like that. They have tons of stuff on there for free. Udemy as well. I think it's pronounced Udemy or Udemy. It's udemy.com. They have some free stuff on there, but it's paid courses. And if like, for instance, we bought like, photography, classes, online classes on there. And we were going to have our kids go through that as well. Video stuff, graphic design, how to actually do coding. I mean, you can go to a college. I remember I sat down with a school. I forgot what it was called, but I remember I did go through some classes myself, and my parents paid. My buddy got a discount. It was I'm trying to remember the name. It had to do with like networking and some other stuff, computer networking and other things. And I remember they were to be certified in some type of, at the time it was like some big thing, and I remember that a lot of the companies would pay like $10,000 per one of these workshop type things that you go for like a week or 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember how long it was. But he got me a discount, so my parents paid like $5 or $10,000 or something for me to go to a couple of them. And this is like where people like big companies, Fortune 500 companies would send their people to learn stuff. And I went through and I was like so lost. And I was just like, oh man, kind of felt just like school again, and then you had a test and all this other junk. Man, I have taken courses on Udemy and Udemy and I've went through YouTube and I've learned things. And I didn't even watch every video. And I learned things, how to do technical things that would have taken me weeks, if not months, to maybe learn in school that would have cost me thousands of dollars.
Right.
So it's insane. It's like the knowledge, the things that are out there available for us for free or for cheap. I mean, the photography course, I think I paid $5 for.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's an advanced course. It's insane. Kids can learn how to do coding and stuff.
Yeah.
How to create an online app that they can sell, on smartphones.
Yep.
On iPhones and things like that. And it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that came to mind when you were saying that is I have bought, over the years, I've bought maybe 2 or 3 spelling curriculums. And each of them were over like $100, $200. And I ended up not using any of them. My greatest resource was going online and printing out free lists of spelling words by grade level, like, most common words. And then I would search, like spelling games or, ways to teach kids how to spell, things like that. And you'll get all these things popping up showing you all these great games you can play or, different things you can do with your child to help them reinforce those spelling words. And I found that those were more valuable than any expensive curriculum that I purchased.
Yep. And there's free forums as well, like communities out there that you can reach out to and say, hey, anybody have any ideas on how to teach this?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many supportive people, or, even better, a local group that you can find too.
Right. And I'm not trying to say that all curriculum is bad. No, I have found some that I've loved, but it's just that if you're looking to do this and not have to spend so much money, then absolutely, homeschooling does not have to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, it can be free. Okay, so the next thing I want to go into is a very common one. I kind of saved this one for pretty much because I know that this goes through people's heads, and we've heard it plenty of times. And that is, well, if my kid is homeschooled, or they say to us about our kids, well, what if they want to go to college someday?
Yes.
Or how are they going to get into a good college, Yeah. And
don't worry, guys. Your kids can go to college.
actually, they wouldn't be able to, and it'd be really difficult.
Yes.
If you were in a time machine and you went 20 years backwards, then yes, it would be. But fortunately, you're not. So in today's day and age, what's crazy, and I actually read a couple articles on this. One of them was on Business Insider. And, that many colleges are now seeking out homeschoolers themselves, as homeschooled students tend to be excellent college students, they say. The two articles, one of them on Business Insider, it was actually titled, or it's, one of the headlines was Harvard Wants Homeschoolers. And it said that, like top schools, including Harvard, MIT, Duke, Yale, Stanford, are all actively recruiting homeschoolers. And it's freaking, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why was because, or actually, no. Let me back up. I remember the article actually they talked about this 18-year-old Claire Dixon, I guess it's pronounced, that they were accepted into Harvard College, which has an acceptance rate of 5.3%.
Wow.
I mean, that's insane.
Wow.
And when they asked her, they said, what got you into the most famous school in the world? That's what they said. What got you into the most famous school in the world? And she answered, homeschooling.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Well, I was listening to a podcast, but it was about unschooling. And so, we'll get into this, but unschooling is a very unconventional way of homeschooling your kids. I mean, you don't use that you're not really like sitting down and doing like typical lessons with your child. They learn through the world and through experience. And
we do that still.
Yeah.
We kind of mix it a little bit too.
We mix it. Yeah. But it was the coolest thing. It was the mom telling her daughter's story. And it was just a short little bleep. So I don't know all the details, but she was saying that her daughter really wanted to go to Cal Berkeley here in California. And her mom at first was like, oh my gosh, we're unschoolers. How's that going to work? She had never researched that. Her daughter was determined. So she applied. She did what she needed to do to apply for the college. And not only did they accept her, but they were just so impressed by what she had to say and her take on things. And she really felt like, same thing like you were saying, she felt like her unschooling experience gave her an edge over the other students. And so I just loved hearing that awesome, testimonial.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it too. So why don't you go through now some of the different types of homeschooling, ways of doing it?
Yes, let's do that. So when the one thing that comes to mind when I think about our journey of homeschooling, when we first began, I felt like I was entering this giant world that I knew nothing about. And when I got online to research homeschooling, talk about information overload. I mean, it was just, yes, I love information, but there is such thing as too much information and too much of a good thing, right? So I kind of started to feel the overwhelm striking me, and I also felt a lot of confusion because people were talking about all different forms of homeschooling. all I thought homeschooling is you go into a public school, you get your curriculum, and you do the work at home. That's all I really knew about homeschooling. So let me just kind of open your eyes to there's 4 main ways that people go about homeschooling. So I'm just going to kind of touch on these. The first one that I'd say most people think of when it comes to homeschooling is where you register with the school district. What you do, and also you need to check with your school district because every district is going to be a little bit different in this. So, just make sure you do that. So what you would do is you would register with the school district. You would get all of your curriculum from them, and you would be responsible for making sure that, you're doing the work with your child. And then usually once a month, you turn in all of your work or, I know, like I said, every school district is different. It could be every week, every month. Oftentimes, the kids will have access to classes also. Like I've heard some people that do this form of homeschooling say, yeah, my child goes in once or twice a week to the local school and they take some classes or they get some help, like some extra tutoring type of thing. One thing about this is because this is through the school district, you are required to do your standardized testing. So they have to do that in order to stay in this type of homeschooling. And you are also required to keep up on the standards. I mean, you have to be following the exact curriculum that the public schools are teaching. So there's no wavering from that,
Is that the one that we did for a while and they gave you?
No.
Okay.
That's my next thing I'll be touching on. Yeah. Yeah. So, I have met people that are happy with this. This just works for them. They like it. For me personally, that I knew that wasn't going to work. So I never ended up even trying that type of homeschooling. So that's, going through the public school. The second one is charter schools. And this is what you were just talking about, Dan. Charter schools are also public. It's through, public education. They're publicly funded. So you are going to have to do like the standardized tests and everything. How this works, though, is there is more freedom in you having more choice over what you want to do with your child. At the beginning of the year, you're assigned somebody that, I wouldn't necessarily, it's a teacher because they're not teaching your child, but it's a person that's going to be responsible.
Like an advisor, consultant kind of person.
Yes. They're responsible for making sure that you're keeping on track. They're going to be collecting your work. With most charter schools, you meet once a month with that person. You provide a few samples of your work from each subject. The cool thing about charter schools, there's 2 things that I thought were kind of cool, is you not only do you have more access to different types of curriculum because they give you freedom in choosing how you want to teach each subject. So let's say math, for instance. You can look online and choose from a wide range of curriculums that have different teaching strategies. If your child's more visual, you can pick a curriculum that's more visual.
And they give you credit. They give you some money, right?
I was just going to
spend on that. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So there is, I would say in charter schools, you have a lot more freedom in that sense. Just like you were saying, Dan, most charter schools will also give you money. Now, they're not just going to hand over a check and say, here's some cash, And it's usually about $1,000 to $2,000 range.
For the year, right? Or something?
For the year.
Okay.
Yeah, per child. And it's put
There's some strings attached, though.
Well, there is,
We'll get into that, yeah.
So it's put into a special account. And what this money's for is this is going to pay for all of your books, your curriculum, your art supplies, your activities. You can even sign them up for approved classes or sports that are approved through the charter school that will allow you to use that cash to pay for that. Like, for instance, I know someone that has their daughter in gymnastics and her gymnastics for the year is paid for.
But it has to be approved through them prior.
Yes,
so it's not like you can say, oh, I want them to go to this special school that's the best.
No, it has to be ones that are approved through them, which that gymnastics studio had to connect with that charter school to.
Yeah, you can't just pick one and be like, well, this is the one I want to go to.
No, yeah.
Yep.
And what you were saying, the strings attached, one thing I didn't like about it, and I didn't know
And
this.
they didn't even tell us, did they? Or just we didn't hear
I didn't
it or
know.
something? 'Cause
They didn't tell us.
We didn't know.
Yeah. At the end of the year, I had to return all my books. I remember I had this globe, and I just thought it was so cool. I had to return the globe. So you have to return everything except for like the workbooks that you write in, things like that.
Yep.
I just thought that was like silly because we were enjoying them still, and they're like, get
you
them
might
back.
want to use them again. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, so now I got to do all that research again to find the next ones. I mean,
Yes.
come on.
Yes. I will say that the drawbacks that I didn't like about it is personally, you and I don't resonate well with like state testing. I do not. And I first of all, I'm not going to subject personally my child to having to sit in a room and take a test in which can never, ever give me an accurate idea of what their real capacity is.
Yeah, it was like an hour and a half or 2 hour drive to go to take that test too.
I mean, and believe me, I know this is, a lot of parents have different ideas about this. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just saying for me, I didn't want that for our kids. And so I remember when we were with this one charter school, it came to the end of the year and I decided I do not want to do the testing this year. And they said, well, that's fine, but you can never come back to our charter school again. And I said, whatever, fine. I won't come back. So I took him out at the end of the year.
Well, I remember another downside was it was like you had a boss. Because I remember you felt stressed, like, oh my God, I didn't get this part done for them, and they're going to come and they wanted me to work on this, and I have to get this done, and it was like it's like a job for you.
I have heard that from so many parents. Oh, so many parents. With both types of homeschooling I just talked about, through the public school and also with charter schools, because you are required to turn in samples from each subject and keep up on all 5 subjects, that kind of puts you in this, like, for me, it felt like I was in a prison. Like, there were times I just wanted to spend 2 weeks on history, or there was a time where my daughter was like really struggling with something with like language arts, and I just wanted to spend like the whole month on it and just dive into it to make sure that she understood it and really grasped what we were working on. But you can't do that.
Yeah, so no freedom.
So there, like I said, there's some freedom, but at the end of the day, it didn't work well for me. Now, I do know so many families that love charter schools, and that's just their way. And for them, that type of structure works really well, and more power to them. For people like myself who need a little more flexibility and fluidity, that was not resonating. So like I said, we were out at the end of that year. No testing.
Nice.
Which now leads me into the third type of homeschooling, which I would say is what we are, or what we do. And this is called eclectic homeschooling. We could also say that this is more of like a relaxed form of homeschooling. Basically, eclectic homeschooling, we use a little of this, a little of that.
Is that the official term, or is that just something? Okay.
Yeah. You've just probably never heard it before.
Yeah, I've never had.
You're not cool like me. You're not like on the in crowd.
Not on the in. I don't know the cool. I don't know what these kids are saying these days.
Yes, So yeah, we use like a little of this, a little of that. I pick from workbooks, from printing out papers online, from going on field trips, from just coming up with random things on my own. So we just kind of go with the flow with our learning. I kind of intuitively pick up on what it is we need to work on, and I'll move in that direction. I'm a big fan of workbooks, though. I think they're super awesome. And textbooks, so. I think I've used those far less than I've used actual like hands-on workbooks and printing out papers and things like that. Sometimes at the beginning of the year, for history, I've put together a unit study where I was like, okay, I want to learn about Egypt this year. So I put together like this whole program that I just like built myself of learning about hieroglyphics, and I even printed out recipes, like old Egyptian recipes, and I put this all in a binder, and we just kind of followed along. Sometimes we skipped something, or we just move on to the next thing if it wasn't working well.
Well, I remember we also did the one where we assigned them It wasn't that long ago. We signed them like their project of,
Oh, yeah.
talking about Denmark, which is where I was born.
Yeah.
And they had to make their own video. So they had to we used ScreenFlow, which is similar to like Camtasia, which is a screen recording that records your computer screen. And they were to build slides and add images and do things that will help them in the real world. I mean, this is stuff I do in my business.
Yep.
And tools that will help them later on in life. So they made their own little presentations. They were either on camera or they weren't, because they don't have to be on camera. I mean, you use your webcam, it didn't have to be polished. So we just let them use their webcam or, just show slides or whatever. And it was pretty cool.
I thought it was really cute too, because they did it on their own, and they had a series of questions they had to research, and they found all the answers, and then they answered all the questions, made their little video, and then they had to make like a recipe, like a Danish recipe, and they each picked one, like a dessert or something.
Let's do that again. This time let's do one like on, I would say, for what's something that you love that you want to share with the rest of the family.
Ooh,
and then they can teach us. So Bodhi can either teach like
Roblox,
or I'm assuming he'll say Roblox. Who knows? He might say Minecraft.
Yeah.
And then and Melina will probably do dance.
Yeah.
And then Kaylee will probably do desserts or something.
Or anime.
Or anime. Yeah, anime actually. She'll probably do that one. And just let them choose. Instead of us telling them, and you can give some ideas. Like and then have them do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So with eclectic homeschooling, we do all 5 subjects, but we don't do that like each subject all the time. Like I don't always do. I mean, I really think I do language arts all the time and math all the time. History, like science, we just kind of organically do throughout the year. I'll just have an idea and we'll do it. But I'm not following some sort of plan per se. So, and for us, I just really like it because I just feel like it's like more how life works, like in the natural world, like kind of just, when we get an inspiration, we follow it. And so one thing I do want to touch on though, is with this type of homeschooling, what we do to cover our bases is just like I said earlier, I fill out the homeschool affidavit, which means that we are a legal private school. And that's how we make sure that, we're doing this legally and everything. And we, so I do know some people that do eclectic homeschooling that still will have their child do like standardized tests, but we just choose not to do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the next one?
Okay. So the 4th one and last one is unschooling. And unschooling for many people, I mean, I remember when I first heard about homeschooling, I thought this sounds so radical. And I also kind of had a hard time grasping how this exactly worked. I mean, I had this idea in my head that it's just kids running amok all over the place with no discipline. And like, that's usually what people think of when they think of unschooling. So pretty simply, or putting it simply, unschooling means that you're not sending your kids to school. You're not creating a school-at-home environment either. Unschoolers don't use curriculum. Education, they look at education as not as a step-by-step linear process or like a one-size-fits-all curriculum. Children learn, they basically think that, children learn whatever they're interested in. Unschoolers believe that it's the child's right to be able to follow what passions they have and what interests they have. And so, they oftentimes you'll hear unschooling as being like child-led education. And sometimes people think child-led, there's this idea that the child has no parental supervision or direction. I would say it's quite the opposite. In my opinion, unschoolers' parents are totally connected with them. They're highly supportive because they're not using like a typical curriculum or workbooks. Their parents are always like seeking out ways to not only inspire but to help the child
to grow,
challenge them. Yeah, and challenge
in the way
them.
They need it and they want it.
Yes,
I mean that's huge. It's like for me, like I keep talking about like I go to YouTube or I go to I buy an online course on something I want to learn,
Yes.
And it's not somebody forcing me to learn something. It's not somebody saying, hey, you must learn this today. Instead it's like, I'm doing stuff that I want to learn, that'll help me in my life.
Exactly. Like you said, they're really picking up on what their children's desire is to learn and finding ways to support them in that. And I would say that eclectic homeschoolers often do a little bit of it's kind of a mixture. I'd say eclectic is a mixture of unschooling and eclectic, because oftentimes eclectic homeschoolers will kind of do more of an unschooling type of thing with certain subjects, which I say we do, when it for instance, my son loving Roblox. I mean, or Minecraft, we have found ways to really inspire him and not only that, but get on his level and learn about what he loves.
Yep.
So
yeah, and then when it comes to math and boring subjects for us like that, we do a lot of the courses and stuff like that, but we also do a combination of the unschooling. They're constantly asking us oh, how much is this and how much is that, and if I added this much to this and which one's more money, and we just have fun with it.
Yeah.
We'll put like Bodhi will be asking about oh, so is a McLaren or a Tesla more expensive? Is this one, or which one's faster? And what does that mean?
Yes.
3.2 seconds or this or that, or 0 to 60. And it's you get to learn about numbers the way that, that they are interested in learning.
Yeah.
Instead of saying 60 seconds means this, you're kind of explaining something that interests them,
Yeah. Well, that's it. Exactly. And one thing I love about unschooling is that they talk about that all human beings are different. And to say that we all learn the same way or are interested in the same thing, like public school teaches us, right, is really going against the natural way that the world works. And so unschoolers have a big respect of really supporting the individual in who they are and finding ways to tap into that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm unschooling myself every day.
Yeah.
Still today I am. No joke.
Yeah. So
no joke at all.
I do want to just say one thing that, before we wrap this up, that I have tremendous respect for all the mothers and the fathers out there, no matter where you are on this journey, whether your child goes to public school, to private school, or let's say you're homeschooling in any form of these types of homeschoolings, okay? Everything that we're sharing here today is our own personal experience of what we have discovered over the years and what we have learned. And it's not a judgment on anyone. It's just that we want to share with you our love for homeschooling because we have seen firsthand just how wonderful it can be. We all know that, as parents, we're doing the best that we can, and parenting is not always easy, right?
Nope.
These kids don't come with instruction manuals.
Yeah. Well, what's that saying? Kids or parents don't raise responsible children. Children raise responsible adults.
Amen.
And it's so true.
Yes.
People say they'll say oh, well, how did you get to be successful? And I said, well, every time we had a kid on the way, it forced me to be more successful.
Yep.
And you want the secret, have more kids.
Does that mean we're having more kids?
Yeah, definitely. We got to get to 1 billion. 10 kids equal 1 billion.
Oh God.
So let's do it.
Okay.
Let's get busy.
All right. So
well, before we get to the Rockstar mission for today, we want to remind you to go to rockstarinlife.com to get, links to the resources mentioned, this episode's transcript, download my free books, training, yoga, meditation, homeschooling advice like you got today, and much more being added every single week. So
Great.
Go to rockstarinlife.com and join the Rockstar in Life revolution today. All right. So Rockstar mission for today. It's going to be a really difficult one, okay?
yes, very difficult.
No, this one's going to be very easy. We're going to unschool this one for you guys. So bottom line is this. If you're not already homeschooling your child, but you've been considering it, or you are not sure still, just, take a nice deep look into and reflect. Listen to this a couple times. Decide, is this something I'm ready to do? Actually, don't even ask yourself if you're ready to do it. If you're thinking about doing it, then you'll never be ready. No. It's either you'll do it or you won't.
Yeah.
So if it's us, we jumped in, we said, hey, we're committed to this. There's no other way.
Yeah.
So take a look at this and decide if this is right for you. If you're already homeschooling your child and you're just looking for other ways, then that is awesome. Hopefully we gave you some new ideas or just kind of reminded you of some things that you could be doing or you might want to try again. And if you have like friends or family that are considering, homeschooling their kids, share this episode with them.
Or maybe someone whose kid is really struggling in school. This would definitely be something to share with them.
And that's the perfect time.
Yeah.
I've heard that before where somebody said, well, how do I know if homeschooling's right for my child? Well, first off, I believe, we believe every kid should be homeschooled.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't matter, actually, I think we didn't even mention this, but, it doesn't matter how much you know. You don't need to know anything. You learn as you go. I mean,
big time.
Both me and Siri Shakti, we were going through some of the stuff we didn't remember and we were learning as we went through. So, I mean, there's plenty of resources out there and you're not alone. So you can do it. So, just do it. And that's all I got to say on that.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And don't forget to be a rock star in your life.
Make the world your stage.
Thanks for listening to RockStar In Life, your source for unleashing your inner rock star. For more tips, training, and free stuff, be sure to go to rockstarinlife.com and join the RockStar In Life revolution today. Thanks again, and don't forget to make the world your stage.